Captain Luke Harris stood at the window of the command center, looking out at the stars. His ship, the Independence, was stationed just outside the asteroid belt near Mars. The crew had been preparing for weeks to mine the belt for valuable resources. But something didn't feel right. Harris had a gut feeling that they were missing something. It was one of those rare moments when his instincts told him to pause and reconsider. But the mission had been approved, and the resources were too valuable to waste. Jessica Lowe, his first officer, walked into the room. She was a calm presence, always thinking 2 steps ahead. She looked at Harris, sensing that something was off. "Are we sure about this, Captain?" she asked. Her voice was low but steady. Harris turned to her, the weight of his decision clear on his face. "I don't know, Jessica. Something about this doesn't sit right with me, but we have our orders. We need those minerals." Lowe nodded, but didn't look convinced. "I understand, Captain. But if we're disturbing something out here, we need to be cautious. The Zorvans are a dangerous species. They've made it clear they don't like trespassers in their territory." Harris had heard the rumors, of course. The galaxy spoke in hushed tones about them. No one knew much, but every time a ship vanished without a trace or a colony went dark, people whispered that the Zorvans had been involved. They were rumored to be a race of terrifying conquerors, with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. But they were also just a myth, something spoken of in the shadows. At least, that was what the Earth Command had assumed for years. Harris looked at Lowe with a weary smile. "I doubt we'll run into any trouble. We're here for the minerals, not to make enemies. Besides, we have a whole fleet backing us up." Lowe didn't seem as sure. She was about to respond when the ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Richard, spoke up from across the room. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual readings in the vicinity. It looks like something is approaching us." Harris's mood shifted. He stepped toward the console, his mind racing. "What do you mean?" "It's a ship, and it's coming in fast." "Too fast to be anything human," Richard replied. His voice was tense. The whole room seemed to freeze, and Harris could hear the quiet hum of the ship's engines in the background. A sense of dread began to creep into his chest. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Harris ordered, his voice firm. But Lowe grabbed his arm before he could turn away. "Captain, wait. We need to think this through. If it's the Zorvans, there's no way we can outrun them. They have faster ships, better weapons. We can't win this battle without knowing what we're dealing with." Harris glanced at Lowe, his mind torn. She was right. The Zorvans had advanced technology that could easily wipe out the Independence and everything aboard it. But they were still a mystery, and until now, humanity had not seen them face to face. The thought of encountering them filled him with a mix of fear and curiosity. "What do you suggest?" Harris asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lowe looked at him, determination in her eyes. "We have to communicate with them first. If we fire first, it's a declaration of war. If they're Zorvans, we need to be careful." Harris nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "All right. Send out a message. Ask them what they want." Richard worked quickly, typing into the console and sending out a standard diplomatic message. The silence in the room was unbearable. Seconds passed like hours. Then, the screen flashed to life with a transmission. A figure appeared on the screen. Harris's heart skipped a beat. It was a Zorvan. The creature on the screen was tall, its skin a deep shade of gray. Its face was angular, with sharp features and glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce straight through the screen. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and commanding. "Human ship, you have entered sacred Zorvan space. Prepare to face the consequences of your actions." The message sent a chill down Harris's spine. He could feel the tension in the room rise, the crew waiting for his next command. Harris took a deep breath and stood tall. "What are you going to do, Captain?" Lowe asked softly. He didn't hesitate. "Tell them we mean no harm. But if they attack us, we will fight back." Lowe nodded and relayed the message, but the Zorvan responded almost immediately. The screen flickered, and the same cold voice came through. "Congratulations. You have just started a war with the deadliest species in the galaxy." Harris stared at the screen in disbelief. The reality of the situation was sinking in. They were at war with the Zorvons, and there was no turning back. The communication cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in the room. Captain Harris felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The voice of the Zorvans still echoed in his ears. He glanced at Lo, who looked equally unsettled. The whole crew was tense, waiting for his next command. "We're at war," Harris muttered to himself. "But we didn't even start it." Lo's voice was calm, but firm. "Captain, we need to prepare. We can't just sit here and wait for them to attack." Harris nodded, forcing himself to focus. He had to act quickly. There was no time to waste. The Independence wasn't equipped to handle a full-scale attack from a species as advanced as the Zorvons, but they had to make do with what they had. Richard Harris called out, "Send a distress signal to Earth Command. We need reinforcements, and we need them now." Richard was already at his console, typing rapidly. "Done, Captain. It'll take a few hours for them to respond, but the message is out." Harris turned to Lo. "Get the crew ready. We may have to fight. I don't want anyone caught off guard." Lo gave a sharp nod and left to carry out the orders. Harris knew she was right. The Zorvons wouldn't wait. If they intended to strike, they would do it soon. The Independence wasn't ready for a fight, but they had no choice. They had to survive. As Harris walked toward the command console, he looked out at the asteroid belt. The space around them was vast, but it felt empty and hostile now. The Zorvons had made their presence known. Harris's fingers hovered over the controls, but before he could do anything, the lights in the room flickered. "Captain, we're picking up more ships," Richard said, his voice shaking. "It's them. They're here." Harris's heart skipped a beat. He moved quickly to the window and looked out. He could see several dark shapes moving through the asteroid field. They were massive ships, much larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with incredible speed, weaving through the rocks like they were part of the very fabric of space. Harris's breath caught in his throat. They were outnumbered and outgunned. The Zorvons had come for them. "All hands to battle stations," Harris ordered. "Prepare for impact." Lo returned quickly, and the crew began to scramble into action. Harris could see the fear in their eyes, but they were following orders without hesitation. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but he refused to show any signs of weakness. He had to keep them calm. He had to keep them alive, Captain Lo said, looking at the tactical screen. "They're not attacking yet. They're just circling us, waiting." Harris frowned. It didn't make sense. Why would they wait? They'd already declared war. Were they trying to intimidate them? Or was there something else going on? "Keep monitoring their movements," Harris said. "If they make any aggressive moves, fire first. We don't have time to negotiate." Lo nodded. "Understood, Captain." The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. The Zorvon ships continued to circle the Independence, their massive forms casting shadows over the small human ship. Harris knew they were outmatched, but he refused to give in to fear. He couldn't. Not now. After what felt like hours. The communication officer spoke again.
"Captain."
"They're hailing us." "Put it on screen," Harris ordered. The screen flickered to life, and once again, the Zorvon appeared. This time, there were 3 of them. Their faces were cold, their eyes glowing red. Harris's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his composure. "Human," the leader said, in a voice as cold as ice. "You have made a grave mistake. You have entered Zorvan space, and you will pay the price for your ignorance." Harris's mind raced. He had to buy more time. "We didn't know," he said quickly. "We didn't mean to invade your space. We were just mining the belt. We didn't know this was your territory." The Zorvons didn't respond immediately. They simply stared at him, their eyes filled with contempt. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. Finally, the leader spoke again. "Your words are meaningless. You have disturbed the balance. Now you will face the consequences." Before Harris could reply, the screen cut off. The silence returned to the room, but this time it was more ominous. Lo looked at Harris, her expression grave. "What do we do now, Captain?" she asked softly. Harris took a deep breath, his mind working quickly. We need to get to Earth Command. We need reinforcements, and we need them fast. But we can't run. If we try to escape, they'll hunt us down. We have to stay and fight. Lowe nodded. Understood, Richard Harris called, turning to the communications officer. Is there any way we can contact Earth Command faster? Can we send a priority message? Richard worked furiously at his console, typing as fast as he could. I'm trying, Captain, but they're jamming our signals. The Zorvans are blocking us. We won't be able to reach them until we break free. Harris cursed under his breath. This was bad. They were stuck. The Zorvans had complete control over the situation, but he couldn't give up. Not yet. Prepare the weapons, Harris ordered. We'll fight. We'll hold them off as long as we can. It's not over until we say it is. The crew nodded in unison. They were scared, but they were ready. Harris could see the determination in their eyes. They weren't going down without a fight. As the Zorvan ships loomed closer, Harris took one last look out at the stars. He couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The Zorvans were not a species to be taken lightly. But humanity had something the Zorvans didn't. They had hope. And that was something worth fighting for. The tension in the command center was unbearable. The Zorvans were circling them, waiting for any sign of weakness. Harris could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him, but he refused to show it. He had to remain calm for the crew. If they saw fear in his eyes, they would panic, and that could cost them everything. Captain Lowe said, breaking the silence, The Zorvans haven't moved yet. They're still waiting. Harris nodded, but didn't take his eyes off the tactical screen. The Zorvan ships were massive, their dark shapes moving with precision. It was clear that they were playing a game of patience. Harris wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. In a way, it gave them a little more time to prepare. But it also meant that the Zorvans had already decided that they could afford to wait. They were confident, and that was dangerous. We need to act before they do, Harris said. His voice was steady, but inside his heart was racing. He knew they had to make a move soon, or the Zorvans would take control of the situation entirely. Captain Richard spoke up from his console, his voice tinged with worry. The Zorvans are charging their weapons. They're about to attack. Harris's eyes snapped to the screen. He could see the faint glow of energy building up in the Zorvan ships. They weren't playing anymore. This was it. The battle had begun. Brace for impact, Harris ordered. Prepare to fire on my command. The crew scrambled into action, their movements quick and precise. Lowe was already at the tactical station, coordinating the defense. Harris could feel the familiar rush of adrenaline as the ship's systems came online. The Independence was ready for a fight, but they were severely outmatched. The Zorvans had better weapons, better ships, and more experience. But Harris refused to back down. The first shot came without warning. A bright, blinding beam of energy shot from one of the Zorvan ships, striking the Independence with a force that shook the entire ship. The impact rattled every crew member and alarms blared throughout the ship. Shields holding at 75%, Lowe reported, her voice calm, despite the chaos around them. But we won't last long at this rate, Harris gritted his teeth. Return fire. Target their lead ship. Lowe didn't hesitate. She tapped a series of commands into the console, and the ship's weapon systems came online. A moment later, the Independence fired back, sending a series of laser blasts toward the lead Zorvan ship. The shots hit their mark, but the Zorvan shields absorbed the impact without any noticeable damage. Direct hit, but no significant damage, Richard reported. Their shields are stronger than we thought. Harris clenched his fists. This wasn't good. The Zorvan's technology was far superior to anything humanity had ever encountered. They had no chance of winning a direct fight, not with the Independence alone. But Harris refused to give up. How long until we can reach Earth Command? He asked, turning to Richard. Richard worked quickly at his console, his fingers flying over the keys. It's hard to say, Captain. Their jamming is preventing us from sending out any long-range signals. We're on our own for now. Then we fight, Harris said. We hold them off as long as we can. The battle raged on, the Independence firing blast after blast at the Zorvans. Each shot felt like a small victory. but it was clear that they were only delaying the inevitable. The Zorvans were relentless, and their ships were like iron walls. Barely feeling the impact of the Independence's weapons, Harris's mind raced. They needed a plan, something that could turn the tide in their favor. But what could they do against an enemy this powerful? They didn't have the firepower to win a conventional battle. They needed to outsmart the Zorvans. They needed to find a weakness, Jessica Harris said, turning to Lo. Do we have any way to disable their weapons or shields? Anything. Lo glanced at the tactical screen, then back at Harris. I've been looking into their systems. It's hard to say for sure, but their energy readings seem to be focused on their weapons. If we can disrupt their power grid, it might disable their weapons, but we'll have to get close to do that. Harris nodded. We don't have much of a choice. Prepare for a boarding maneuver. We'll take a small team and infiltrate one of their ships. Disrupt their systems from the inside. Lo raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about this, Captain? It's a risky move. We're talking about boarding one of their ships while they're shooting at us. It's almost a suicide mission. Harris's gaze hardened. It's the only shot we've got. We can't win this fight with just our ship. We need to get inside their systems and take them down from the inside out. Lo hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Understood. I'll prepare the team. Harris turned to the rest of the crew. Listen up. We're going to board one of their ships and take it out from the inside. This will be dangerous, and not everyone will make it back. But if we don't do this, we won't make it out of here alive. Any questions? There were no questions. Just the sound of weapons being prepared and the crew bracing themselves for what was to come. Let's do this, Harris said, his voice firm. We fight for our survival. The crew moved quickly, preparing to board the Zorvan ship. Lo had already selected a small team of elite soldiers. They would be the ones to lead the attack. Harris knew it would be a long shot, but it was the only chance they had as the team readied themselves. Harris couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment that would define everything. If they failed, it would be the end of humanity's struggle for survival. But if they succeeded, they might just have a chance. The time had come. Harris didn't look back as the airlock doors opened, and he led his team toward the Zorvan ship. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The sound of the airlock doors opening was deafening. Harris felt his heart racing as he stepped onto the cold metal floor of the Zorvan ship. The space around him was dark and quiet, but he could feel the tension in the air. His team was right behind him, their weapons ready. Lo was at the front, leading the way. The mission was simple. Get to the Zorvan power core and disable it. The problem was that nothing was ever simple when it came to the Zorvans. The corridor stretched out in front of them, narrow and dimly lit. The walls were covered in strange symbols and alien technology. Harris had never seen anything like it before. The Zorvans had technology far beyond humanity's, and every inch of the ship felt foreign, almost alive. Stay sharp, Lo whispered as they moved forward. We don't know what we're walking into. The silence was broken only by the sound of their footsteps. Harris could hear the pounding of his own heart in his ears. He knew they didn't have much time. The Independence was still under heavy fire from the Zorvan fleet, and they needed to disable the enemy's weapons before it was too late. Richard, Harris said into his cum. How are we doing on the Independence? Are we still holding up? We're holding, Captain, Richard's voice crackled over the cum. But their fire is getting worse. We can't keep this up much longer. You need to get to that core and shut them down. Harris clenched his jaw. We're on our way. Keep us posted. They moved quickly, trying to stay out of sight. Every corner could hide a Zorvan soldier, and Harris wasn't sure if they were prepared for a fight. The ship felt empty, but that didn't mean they were alone. Harris had learned not to trust anything about the Zorvans. They were always one step ahead. They turned a corner, and suddenly the silence was shattered. A group of Zorvan soldiers appeared, their glowing red eyes staring at them with cold hatred. They were tall, their dark, armored bodies moving like shadows. Harris didn't hesitate. He raised his weapon and fired. The blast hit one of the Zorvans square in the chest, but it didn't go down. The alien's armor absorbed the impact, and it charged forward, its weapon raised. Take cover! Lo shouted. The team scattered, finding cover behind the walls. Harris could hear the sound of energy blasts tearing through the air. He peeked around the corner and fired again. This time, the shot hit a weak spot in the Zorvan's armor, and it collapsed to the floor. One down low said, "Keep moving." The team pushed forward, taking out Zorvans as they went. They moved with precision, their training kicking in as they fought through the alien ship. Harris's mind was focused. He couldn't afford to lose anyone on this mission. Every member of the team was vital. As they reached another junction, Harris felt a shift in the air. It was subtle at first, but he could sense that something was coming. A low, rumbling noise echoed through the ship like the sound of an engine starting up. Captain Lowe said, her voice tight, "The core's below us? We're almost there, but something's not right." Harris felt it too. The ship was too quiet. The Zorvans weren't trying to stop them anymore. Instead, it felt like they were being herded, led straight into a trap. He glanced at Lowe, and she nodded. She was thinking the same thing. "We need to hurry," Harris said. "Something's coming." They moved faster, their footsteps quickening as they descended into the lower levels of the ship. The air was colder down here, and the walls were slick with strange glowing fluids. The power core was just ahead. They could feel it, low hum vibrating through the floor beneath them. As they reached the entrance to the core room, Harris motioned for the team to stop. They were in position. This was the moment. He tapped his cum again. Richard Harris said, "We're at the core. Get ready to disable their systems." Richard's voice came through, clear but tense. "Be careful, Captain. We're picking up something massive. It's heading your way." Before Harris could respond, the ground beneath them shook. The ship groaned, and a deafening roar echoed from deep within. The walls cracked, and a door on the far side of the room slid open. Out stepped a Zorvan much larger than the others, its armor covered in glowing red markings. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a general. The Zorvan general's eyes glowed brighter than any Harris had seen before. It raised its weapon, and the team opened fire. But the shots bounced off its armor without leaving a scratch. Harris knew this fight was different. They couldn't beat it in a straight fight. "Get to the core," Lowe shouted. "I'll hold it off." Harris hesitated for a split second, but Lowe was already moving. She dove toward the core control panel, her weapon raised as she fired at the Zorvan general. The general staggered back, but only for a moment. It was still coming. Fast. "Go," Lowe yelled. "I've got this." Harris didn't look back. He and the rest of the team rushed toward the control panel, hoping that it would be enough to disable the core. They could hear the Zorvan general's heavy steps behind them, but they didn't have time to worry about that now. The fate of the Independence and everyone aboard rested on their shoulders. Harris reached the panel and started working as fast as he could. He could feel the pressure mounting. The Zorvan general was closing in, and there was no way they could fight it. The power core was their only hope. Come on," Harris muttered under his breath as he tapped at the controls. The panel lit up with red lights, and the hum of the ship grew louder. They were close, but it wasn't enough. They needed more time. Then the ground shook again, and the ship's lights flickered. Harris knew they didn't have much time left. He turned to see the Zorvan general charging toward them, its weapon aimed straight at them. With a final, desperate effort, Harris pressed a button on the panel. The lights turned green, and a loud alarm sounded. The core had been disabled. The Zorvan general stopped in its tracks, its eyes flashing in confusion, but it was too late. The ship began to shake violently as the core went dark, and the Zorvan general roared in frustration. Harris didn't wait. He grabbed Lowe's arm, pulling her away from the panel. "Let's go," he yelled. The team sprinted back the way they came, racing to the airlock. They could hear the Zorvan general behind them, but they didn't slow down. Harris knew they had to make it out. This was their chance. They weren't out of danger yet. They had a fighting chance now. As they reached the airlock, Harris turned to Lowe, his voice steady. "We did it. Now we just need to get back to the Independence." Lowe nodded, her face grim. "Let's move, Captain." "We're not out of this yet." The airlock door hissed shut behind them, and the team rushed toward the shuttle bay. Harris's heart was pounding in his chest, but there was no time to rest. They had completed their mission, but the danger wasn't over. The Zorvins would be coming for them. They had to get back to the Independence and prepare for the next fight. Lo was the first to reach the shuttle, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of Zorvin soldiers. The shuttle bay was quiet, but Harris knew better than to assume they were alone. The Zorvons were smart. They would be tracking them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Captain Lo said, her voice low. We need to move quickly. The Independence is still under heavy fire. We can't afford to waste time. Harris nodded. I know. Let's get to the shuttle. Richard, are you ready? We're ready, Captain, Richard replied through the com. Just waiting for you. Harris turned to the rest of the team. Let's move out. We make it back to the Independence, and we'll have a chance to win this. The shuttle was waiting for them, its engines already humming. The team climbed aboard, and Lo immediately took the pilot's seat. She didn't need to be told what to do. She was focused, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease, as the shuttle's doors closed. Harris took a deep breath and looked out the window. He could still see the Zorvin ships in the distance, their massive forms hanging in the dark expanse of space. The Independence was a small target compared to those giants, but it was their home. It was humanity's last hope. All systems are go, Lo reported. We're ready for launch, and let's get back, Harris said. The sooner we're in position, the better. The shuttle shot out of the bay, leaving the Zorvin ship behind. The Independence was waiting for them, its engines still firing, its shields holding strong against the enemy fire. But Harris could see the damage. The ship had been hit hard, and they were running out of time. Richard, report, Harris said into his comm. Shields are holding at 40%, Richard replied. Weapons are still online, but we're running low on ammo. The Zorvons have us outgunned. We need you back here, Captain. We're on our way, Harris said. Keep the ship in one piece for us. As they neared the Independence, Harris felt the weight of what was coming. They had won a small victory by disabling the Zorvan power core, but they were still in the middle of a war. The Zorvons weren't going to stop until they wiped out every last one of them. The Independence was humanity's only chance to survive. Lo guided the shuttle smoothly into the docking bay, and the team rushed out the moment the doors opened. Harris could see Richard waiting for them, his face pale but determined. We've got problems, Captain, Richard said. The Zorvins are regrouping. They're calling for reinforcements. Harris's mind raced. Reinforcements meant more ships, more firepower, and less time. They had to act fast. How long until they arrive? Harris asked. Maybe an hour, Richard said. Maybe less. We need to get ready for a final push. We won't survive another direct hit. Harris's eyes scanned the crew. They were battered, exhausted, but there was no fear in their eyes. They had been through too much to back down now. They were ready for this. All right, Harris said, his voice steady. We've still got some fight left in us. Get to your stations. Lo, you're with me. We'll strategize and get this ship ready for a last stand. Lo nodded, and the team spread out. Harris and Lo made their way to the command center, where the tactical screens flickered to life. The Zorvin fleet was still there, still circling, but now they were moving closer. They're coming, Lo said. We have to make sure we can hold them off long enough for Earth Command to respond. If we can just survive until reinforcements arrive, we might have a chance. Harris stared at the screen, his mind working quickly. The Zorvons had the upper hand in almost every way, but they didn't know everything. There had to be a weakness, something they hadn't accounted for. We'll need to outsmart them, Harris said. We can't fight them head on, but if we use the asteroid field, we might be able to get the upper hand. You think we can pull that off? Harris nodded. We've got the knowledge of this system. We know the field better than they do. If we use the asteroids as cover, we might be able to get in close and disable their ships one by one. We hit them fast, then disappear before they can retaliate. Lo thought for a moment, then nodded. It's risky, but it might just work. Let's do it. The crew moved into position, and Harris gave the order. The Independence slid into the asteroid field, using the rocks to hide its movements. The Zorvans didn't know what was coming. They were confident, but they didn't have the advantage anymore. The first Zorvan ship was taken by surprise. The Independence fired a precise shot, hitting the enemy's engines and causing it to drift off course. The crew quickly disabled the next ship, then the next. The Zorvans were being picked off one by one, and they didn't have the time to react. Harris's heart raced as the battle raged on. The Zorvans were fast, but the Independence was more agile. The crew worked together, coordinating their strikes and moving quickly through the asteroid field. The Zorvans were losing ships, and their confidence was slipping. But then, just as Harris thought they might have a chance, a massive Zorvan warship appeared from behind an asteroid. This ship was bigger, stronger, and its weapons were more advanced. It fired at the Independence, hitting their shields hard. "You can't take another hit like that," Lowe said. "We need to disable that ship now." "Well," Harris said, "one more push. We take it down together." The Independence moved into position, and the crew fired everything they had left. The warship's shields flickered and then failed. With one final shot, the Zorvan warship exploded, sending a shockwave through the asteroid field. The Zorvans were down, but Harris knew this war was far from over. The Independence had won this battle, but humanity still had a long fight ahead. "Well done, everyone," Harris said. "We survived today. But this is just the beginning," Lowe nodded. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next, Captain."